When help is needed, it's amazing what the human heart can do. Hi, I'm Ali MacGraw. I'm here to share some stories, tender stories, funny stories, even dramatic stories about art and some of the artists who choose to use their creativity to help others. Art seems to bring out our most giving nature. It can shape both our personal and collective destinies. On the pony trail, there was no hierarchy of better than or smarter than. There was just an awareness of the interconnectedness that generates sharing. This story begins in 1999 when a citizen of Zurich, Switzerland, a mastermind named Beat Seeberger Quinn, originated a great idea for an art project, which he dubbed Cows on Parade. Quickly capturing the public's fancy, the whimsical cows were put on exhibit and then auctioned off for charity. That money was given to nonprofits. Cows on Parade jumped the Atlantic, landing in Chicago. Soon there were cows in New York City, pigs in Cincinnati, and buffalo in Buffalo, New York. By the time the idea reached Santa Fe, it was the horse. In picking the horse, as the organizers of this show did, they really picked a creature that has historically been really deeply connected to man. The first wild horses roamed 8 million strong across the country, but they were forced into extinction by climate changes and man's overhunting. They returned with the Spanish conquistadors, and now domesticated, the re-emergence of the horse changed the entire history of North America. The land was settled by men on horseback. In New Mexico, the horse is such a mystical part of our hearts that for many of the artists, the use of a horse as a canvas truly changed their lives and the way they experience their own art. Each horse has its own story. Let's follow the trail and share those stories now. The actual horse was made by this brilliant artist, Starr York. Starr is one of the premier bronze sculptors working today, has won numerous awards, and was one of the original group to consider bringing this project to New Mexico. The big difference was this: in all the other projects, each artist just got a mold to paint. Starr sculpted this horse, and waiving her usual fee, created a magnificent canvas as her gift for all the other artists. I've seen a lot of horse sculpture in my time, a lot. And from the second I saw one of these in its unpainted white delivery stage being trucked through the streets of Santa Fe, I felt that Starr had created a creature of heart and life. She is so attuned to horses and has a life about horses that you feel this to be a breathing, heartfelt animal.
I raise quarter horses, and my mares are from the stallions of the 4-6's Ranch in Texas. The horse is modeled after one of my brood mares. Her nickname was Tank, which I thought was fit her very well because she's built quite wide and broad. And one of the reasons for choosing her is I thought that this would give the artists a much broader canvas to work from. It's just really satisfying to see how people have taken something as basic as the form that I created and ran with it and did such imaginative, creative, different things.
The Painted Ponies project came to me as a blessing, really. It came at a time when I had been painting for about 10 years I had been out painting. I do most of my paintings, landscape painting, in the areas around here, and there's a lot of beer bottles thrown, and they would shine so dramatically in the sun. And I thought, that's so cool. So I started picking up this glass and filling my pockets and washing it and keeping it in bowls and staring at it. And I thought, how am I going to collect all that glass, smash it, paint it all alone? I need a body of young people to help. We had the entire community over here working. The kids really were from ages 4 years old to 92. And then I'd sit them down and they'd start putting the glass or painting the glass, and it just became, it took on a life of its own that I had no idea it would be so healing to the community. And it really was amazing. I'm very proud of it. I think it has a magical, lyrical sort of power to it when it's moving and refracting the light. Every single facet has a story. It was a natural to engage the community, and once the kids saw the process and started to work, it just took off. It was like wildfire. So I knew there was potential to really touch them, but I had never used the full spectrum of cultural arts. And so when I walked into this school last year, the Velarde Elementary School, and met Ruby and saw those beautiful children and the size of the school, it's very small, 130 children. I thought this is the practice ground to expand this vision of inspiring children. This is a very unique, small town, historical village of Velarde, New Mexico. And the people are very much, I feel, in need of creativity in their lives. I think it would bring my heart a lot of joy to know that before I died and left the planet, as many people as possible got to touch something about creativity, because it is the essence of our lives. I think, you know, it's why I live, and I think it's necessary to our society to have creative process as part of everything. The whole community is responding in a way that's just like peeling back something that is part of our essence. We've learned to be these other ways with the drugs, and the difficult economic situation has created this sort of a skin that's not really who we are. And by the children expressing themselves through the art, it's just helped them to see and be inspired what the possibilities are, because the children are the best screen to view that kind of energy through. It's just, there's no other truth. You know, they don't lie. It's just clear and beautiful. And it's going to be bigger and bigger, because they're just cracked open now. Of course, the horse is now completed. It is now at the Children's Hospital in Albuquerque, and they are building an atrium for it that will encompass healing, occupational therapy. It's going to be spectacular and will inspire the children, you know, because other children made this horse, and it's just, it gives me chills to think that it's going to be there.
Well, my name's Cal Peacock, and the name of my horse is The Reunion of the Family of Man. And how I got involved in this, I've been painting horses, I call them medicine horses, for about 20 years now. I normally paint on tin. So as soon as I heard about it, it was so right up my alley. I thought if anybody ought to paint one of these horses, it better be me, because, you know, after painting medicine horses for 20 years. And then one day I was sitting in my studio, and a lady came in and said, "Cal Peacock, how come you haven't painted one of those painted ponies?" And I did my little spiel, and I would, but I don't have a sponsor, and it takes $5,000 for a sponsor to get a horse. And immediately I hadn't finished my sentence, and she said, "Well, you got one now." So the beneficiary is the health care for the homeless. So I got the sponsor and got the pony, and then really sat with it, as so many artists do. I mean, it's true that the process uses you. And so I just got as quiet as I could and meditative, and sort of created my own little ceremony with it, and looked at what I got. So here is the main medicine of this horse. It's the vision of First of all, we've got a window, and it's the shape of an egg. It's the womb, the beginning. This in the middle gives me the feeling of the chalice or the Holy Grail, or maybe sharing the elixir of life. This is like a heavenly blessing that comes out. And the two hands sharing it, coming from opposite directions, it's the reunion of the family of man. So this is about reconnecting our soul. If we were a whole and healed culture, there wouldn't be any homelessness. In the Native American history, the hands that they put on a horse, a battle horse, a war horse, it was done in blood, and it represented the number of people they'd killed in battle. And all the hands on this horse represent the homeless people that have died in the streets. Breaks me up, but so this is the brown hand is the man's hand, of course, and the woman is the blue hand, and then here's the hand of a child. And in the middle is a little touch of blue. The turquoise blue is for the healing. The medicine bundle is, it has a lot of different things in it that mean something to me. The corn, the food. I just love the colors of this fabric, and it was a shawl that I used to treasure, and so it's a sacrifice. It was something I really didn't want to part with, so I gave it. The peacock feathers represent the beauty way. And in India, the peacock is like our eagle. So it's ultimate truth. I tried to represent as many different cultures as I could think of. Here's the peyote bird, here's Spider Woman, Christianity, the yin yang. This lady was here. I just saw her. I didn't know I was going to paint her, but there I absolutely saw her and just followed the lines as I was painting. And that was the confirmation. That was the turning point when I really knew that you know, my process with art is often, it's a struggle. My muse is really a hateful winch, I'll tell you. You call yourself an artist, what the hell you think you're doing? Just give it up, go get a job. And it's those moments when all of a sudden I realize that I've been used by something greater than me. This I had a lot of fun with. When I was first painting this horse, I just left this all blank and white and wrote graffiti this. Tied a pin on the horse and left it for whoever wanted to write whatever wisdom they had. And so that's what's under there. It's got a lot of people's wisdom there. And but then I continued to work it. It keeps calling. It wasn't finished. It wanted more, so I kept going. Didn't really know what I was painting. I was just sort of painting over, and the texture kept building. And pretty soon I realized it was some kind of a surrealistic turtle shell. And there again is the symbol of the turtle. The Mother Earth is the turtle, and also another animal that carries its home on its back. Now the mask. A lot of my medicine horses have masks. And it makes me think about there's a song about Lila, Lila. It's chant the names of God until the masquerade no longer matters. So this mask is being shattered so that we get to that place that the masquerade no longer matters. And we are one. And we recognize our responsibility to that part of our family.
The $7,000. I need a $7,000 bidder. I have a $6,000 bidder. I need $7,000. We need seven there. It is sold at $7,000. Your number, please. 707.
I'm so pleased that the proceeds from the sale are going to benefit the Museum of Indian Arts and Culture. They're such a beautiful people, the Hopis, and Greg Lomayesva is a Hopi artist. I think the fact that this horse is going to be in this garden shows that it is representing harmony and peace, which the Hopi culture absolutely illustrates in our society. He is definitely home because this here was an old polo field, and he is now part of the You might say the legacy.
Well, I was one of those kids that like scribbled on walls and things. I am the most unorthodox painter you will ever run across. And I'll tell you, I'd use a kitchen sink if I could stick it to a canvas. It's the only thing that I've ever truly wanted to do. And as odd as this is going to sound, I don't think I chose it, it chose me. And you know, you have figured it out, I am not native. Wasn't going to do it unless it met with their approval. And obviously it met with their approval. And I will tell you, to this day, I receive a tremendous amount of guidance. Yes, I paint Native Americans, but I paint people. I'm very privileged and honored that I actually do get to work with people of all different kinds of nations. And what's amazing is it's sort of like one knows somebody and they know somebody and they know somebody. And it's not unusual for one of them just to show up. I think it was last year there was a gentleman hitchhiked all the way from Oklahoma. And if you'll notice in my pieces, you're not going to find instruments of war. You're not going to find guns. You're not going to find, you know, knives or whatever. They don't need it. I mean, you know, their protection, their whatever is in the face. Well, this is just me, but I think it's almost important for anybody who paints, is you have to be able to feel it, you have to see it, hear it, but you have to kind of know it. And where I'm going with this, through the years, I've learned to listen to these things. They will tell me where they need to go. Actually, I had somebody ask me one time, there was several people watching, and they said, well, do you prepare a palette? No. Well, do you do an underpainting? No. You know, then the guy said, you just attack. I do a lot of mixing right on the canvas. You know, instead of, you know, a little bit here, a little bit, that's a waste of time for me. I just soon open the jar and let's go. A lot of people that I run across goes, well, this is the way to do this. There is no set way to do it. And gee, I hope this doesn't offend anybody, but I can't see any future in dictated self-expression. You know, it's you have to get in it, you have to feel it, you have to smell it, you have to taste it, and make it work. Okay, you want me to tell you about the horse, right? The name of the piece is As Long As There's One. This is actually a ceremonial piece, and the different feathers all basically represent something, and the best way that I could explain it is if all of us here in the studio were of one tribe, I would give you something of mine. It's an extension of power is what it is. The paint on the face, I hear people constantly go, it's war paint. It is not war paint. It is religious paint. And each person would pretty much have their own markings. Star did an excellent job on this, and I like the part that it was slightly pregnant. But the reason why I wanted to get involved with the Painted Ponies project is everything goes back to New Mexico charities. So it's a win-win situation for everybody.
The lowrider horse is a very simple concept, which is people have been accessorizing their transportation forever. And so it was really the reversal of from horse to car, but back from car to horse. And then the fun part was taking it to the body shop. The horse came to Lujan's as a completely naked polyurethane fiberglass mold. And the horse was put in their oven and baked initially to outgas anything in the mold itself. Because you want the depth of color, there's a black like undercoat that went on that. Then there's a gray primer that goes on. Then there are two colors, and the colors are sprayed on so that if you look at the horse, it goes from, it's almost a root beer color. I think one's called Aztec Gold, and I think one's called root beer. But the hooves and the under part of the horse are darker. Under the tail, it's darker, and then the top of the horse is a much brighter color, and then there's two coats of clear lacquer over that. And it's buffed out, so you can like turtle wax this horse if you want to. It's just like a car. If you've ever looked inside the interiors of these lowrider cars, they have very kind of cushy, luxurious, but what I call sort of trashy interiors. They're like crushed velvets and things that kind of have a bordello quality to them. So I wanted to make a horse blanket that had the same kind of really rich and elegant, but really trashy kind of appeal to it at the same time. It was important that you really see the definition of the horse and the shadow really from any angle. And one of the nice things about the horse is you get the reflection of the environment back into the horse. So if you take it outside, you see the clouds and the landscape in the horse. One of the things about painting it with this layer of low rider paint is that you get this depth of color as though you're looking into a pool of water, and it's quite lovely.
Ideas, they always begin small. I think every artist has certain concepts that he wants to put across in his work, and I certainly did. And as I began this particular piece, I began with the concepts for the paintings on each side of the horse. They both depict what I believe are the two art meccas of American society. And one is New York City and the other one is Santa Fe. This piece was done for the Assurance Home, which is in Roswell, New Mexico. And I really wanted to do something that would bless those kids. And in beginning the piece, the kids were real excited about it, and they wanted to have participation in it. As we began working on it, it began to grow in its concept, and what was going to be a horse that was just standing there became a horse playing a saxophone on a rooftop, a horse playing a saxophone on a rooftop with some jazz cats listening to it, and the artist running through the antique shops trying to find bar stools short enough for the jazz cat. I wanted something that really spoke of American art. Even inside the roof, it has a stereo system that can play jazz music where they can hear Billie Holiday sing while they're maybe looking at the score by Duke Ellington that's on the nightstand here. Gosh, inside the window, I stretched a little bit. I was thinking, boy, if I could ever meet a nightclub singer that was my idea of the most gorgeous, beautiful, sexy woman, in the world, who would it be? And I immediately thought of Jessica Rabbit. The other jazz cats are sitting around listening in while some mice and such that are chilling out on the roof eating cheese. Art is the pure soul of a society. If you want to know the heartbeat and the pulse of a society, look at the artwork. If it's uplifting, if it's strong, if it's vivacious, you know that society is as well. I believe the idea of doing any type of work that benefits organizations that reach out to help people is invaluable. These people are doing this for a reason, and it's because they want to sow into the lives of other people. They want to help other people. They want to reach out to other people. They want to do something of lasting value. My enjoyment comes from the creativity, and I am telling you, this piece of work will be embedded in my mind as one of the most exciting ventures that this young New Mexico boy ever jumped into.
Rosie the Appaloosa began life as a computer design, a small rose-covered pony on a sheet of paper. When the life-size pony was delivered to my studio on a cold February day, it was exciting to imagine that blank 3D surface growing from a sketch to a riotous display of multi-hued roses in bud and bloom, sprouting from earthen hooves and thorny branch-covered legs. At first I painted under directional light from overhead in the studio, but as the air warmed with spring, I opened the doors wide each day so each bud and blossom sprang to life in full sun. Not a single rose was repeated, and the dimensionality created by fully lit blossoms and buds on her graded neutral background gave her a depth I could not have imagined or achieved in a computer design. I dubbed her Rosie, and as she departed her first stable on a warm May day, the 3 real rose bushes by the studio door bloomed more profusely than any past spring, as if to complement her radiant and unusual beauty.
I've been painting gourds for 20 years now, and I wanted to try and see if my designs, if I can incorporate them on other things. To be honest with you, I was very nervous because I wanted to do a good job, and I didn't know at the time what to paint on the horse, and for some reason I just kept going back toward the prehistoric designs. Now all the designs that I paint on the horse are being painted right on the spot. It's all done out of my head from designs that I've studied throughout the years. When I first got started, I bought a book on Anasazi pottery. I found out that each design represents something, sometimes lightnings, clouds, animals, mountains, just all different kinds of things. And the horse that I'm painting for horsepower has probably over 60 different varieties of Anasazi designs incorporated in the horse. Those designs, they flow. They all go together. They interlock. Out of all the Indian designs and motifs, I like the Anasazi the most because of the simplicity and because it has a feeling of the earth, or it's just a calming design. For me it is. And as the design progresses up the horse and stuff, you'll be able to see all the different designs coming together. What happened was I was working in Los Alamos at the labs, and one day I was working out They were burying some radioactive materials, and the wind was blowing. It was hot and dusty, and I was thinking, there's got to be another way. And I told the Lord, I said, I am not a lazy person. If there's anything I could do other than this, if you can open the door for me, I sure would appreciate it. Within about a week or so, my wife and I decided to drive to California, and we were driving down the road, and I looked over on the left-hand side of the road, and there was an old farmhouse there, and I saw these round things just piled up, and I couldn't figure out what in the world those things were. And I went and knocked on the farmhouse door, and this lady opened the door. I says, "Ma'am, what are those things?" And she said, "They're gourds." I says, what are gourds?" And she said, "Well, people make birdhouses, planters out of them, and things like that." And I said, "Well, are they for sale?" And she said, "Yeah." So I asked her if I could buy some. I bought some of the gourds, brought them back to New Mexico and painted them up, and took them up to Los Alamos to show some of my friends, and everybody wanted to buy one. Without faith, it's impossible. With God, nothing's impossible. With a lot of hard work, you know, your dreams do come true. They do come true. They do.
And there was a gal who submitted a cow pony that I thought was absolutely sensational. So I saw her work and I showed it to some people, and I couldn't get a sponsor for her. So I invited her to go ahead and do the pony. I said, "I will sponsor you because I believe that you will do a sensational pony." Delivered her a pony, she started working on it. I went out and took a look at it, and it was terrific. I had a group of businessmen come in who wanted to sponsor a pony. I said, "Come with me." I took him out to the artist gallery. That artist is Lori Musil. She did Cow Pony, and at the auction it sold for $50,000.
Last call in the house for $55,000. It is sold for $50,000.
You want to know how it's done? Let me show you how I started it. Well, it just started one day where I was trying to make up my mind how to put this thing together. Just in order to get it onto this piece of, you have to kind of figure out where the lumps and bumps are and where it would kind of fit the critter into that picture, into that. See the big belly of the animal right here? Maybe it would be nice with the belly of the cow. How this big rounded area feels like a bull on his forehead. It's all rounded and soft. And trying to fit the shapes into it, and always considering the fact that I'm going to make this face fit this cow, a cow's face right onto it, so that people will have a hard time figuring out where that horse is. So you start off, basically, here's the drawing in its flesh. That's all I had for him to start with. And then I had to go back in here and pick a side and kind of just fit the animal in there. So I go back in here and start filling in space where the red is, and then I'll go back in and do the yellow at the base, the ochre, and make it fit. Just pick a little bit lighter shade, start adding a little color to it. Is look what happens when you start working on it and how beautiful it becomes with just a few strokes, with a few loving, kind thoughts. A little bit of paint, bringing it back to life. And this is almost like bringing this horse to life. Sometimes there's a feeling of feeling their breath on you as you're painting them. And you can feel their spirit. You can see those long eyelashes and those soft brown eyes with their little twinkle in them. And you know that they're alive and that you just want to reach out there and touch them. Well, it's a fun process because as you're going, the picture changes. The shape of the face changes. You get a different expression on the animal that
didn't plan on in the first place. And you keep on changing them as you go. Nothing really sets it back except for a moment when you paint out the wrong area, like I just did. But I'm so proud of where it's going. It's going to a wonderful new museum.
Hope you have a pleasant journey. I'll be out to see you soon. Mwah!
The horsepower was an interesting thing just from the beginning because Rod Barker, his brother, is my FedEx man, and he plays on my softball team. So that's kind of how I was thrown into the mix.
It was no contest. Joel Nakamura's horse he was perfect for us because he had played in the youth symphony. He cared very much about youth. He has young children. He cares about music. His designs were so interesting and it was a perfect match for us.
I wanted to have a theme that dealt with not only horses, but with mythology kind of indigenous to the region, which most all Native American cultures have a Thunderbird myth. And where the horse comes into it is on the plains, the young warriors on the plains felt if they could ride their horse underneath the shadow of a Thunderbird, that they would gain, mystical powers or magical powers and become invincible for life. The Thunderbird would bring not only the rain and thunder, but there was like a calm and a music that would happen. And they talk about this kind of musical storm, that the Thunderbird brought in. So I thought that would be a neat way to tie that in as well with my sponsor.
And we started with 40 students. In the last 8 seasons, we've grown to 220, 25 students and 11 programs. It sold for $17,000. That meant a lot to a youth symphony. And it turned out to be, I would say, the most fun way to date we've ever made money.
Most recently, I was asked to do the opening and closing ceremonies program art for the 2002 Winter Games in Salt Lake City. And so that was a great honor to be asked, to participate in that. Of any artist they could have called in the world, that they called me was great.
I am at High Desert Bank in Albuquerque, and they're the sponsors for my horse, Give Me Wings. And I wrote a poem. It says, I will not forget those who sacrificed on the altar of precious freedom. Give me wings to soar beyond my dreams and touch the stars. And the horse has a star in her eye, and of course the star is on the American flag, and she has a star on her forehead. So this is all connecting together. I enjoyed painting in public and getting the comments from the people walking in. A lot of the people come back every day. They've been following the progress of the horse daily. This is my painted pony from last year. Its name is Horse Feathers. I sculpted the feathers out of an epoxy and molded them and mounted them in place, and there's 7 feathers on the horse. And then the large feathers that are painted on the horse have stylized ponies running across the bottom of them. These represent the 4 nations of man: black man, red man, yellow man, and white man. It's a pattern of unity. I was looking at the eagle feather, and you can see how a feather, especially in an immature eagle feather, the bird's base of the feather is quite white, and then it starts patterning in spots and turns to dark on the end. And the Appaloosa was a perfect choice for the horse to support this idea, because the Appaloosa is white in the back with the patterned spots and dark in the front. And so I was thinking, now if I put these two guys together, the feather and the Appaloosa, you can see there's a whole ring of spots going all the way around the entire horse, right here where both the transitions take place. They were able to put together this idea to benefit so many different directions. One is it promoted the state in general. It was just healthy for the state to have this project. Individual sponsors, it could have been individual people, but most of the sponsors, in my understanding, were businesses. So the businesses became involved with the arts. The artists came connected with the businesses. Then they brought in the charities, and each charity was benefited by the auction of the horse at the end. So you hear of win-win situations. I think this was a win-win-win-win-win situation. There was people winning in all directions. It was just a great promotion for the state, and people really enjoyed them. And oh, it was so much fun to do. I just have had so much fun doing this. It's like being a kid again.
It was quite something for me because I work so small generally to have this large thing turn up in the studio, and the animals were pretty shocked too, I want to tell you. And there are a lot of special problems with using something like that for a canvas. Crawling around underneath the legs and trying to, get up at the belly, and they ought to have a chiropractor probably on staff of horsepower, I think. But I think the horse was a terrific choice for New Mexico. And people have feelings about horses. Horses get into people in an emotional way that most other animals don't. Everybody has a dream about riding a horse or being with a horse, and they're so beautiful that I think it was a special choice for this area. It was the perfect blank canvas, and it has an appeal all by itself, and it seems to lend itself so well to everything that everybody did. We've spent a lot of time together, this mayor and I, and I would say the predominant feeling was I had a really good time. I had a lot of fun doing it. I had a problem with it in that early on the horses came with a gray primer, and what do I know, I'm an etcher, right? So I just started painting, and it turned out it was really hard to cover the gray with the acrylic paint. So I basically painted this whole horse 3 or 4 times with a 1/4-inch brush. I left school and I backpacked around the country, and I kept running into etching presses. I'd move to a little town and I'd find an etching press in a barn somewhere that somebody would say, "Oh, nobody's used this for years, you're welcome to use it if you want." And after the 3rd or 4th etching press I bumped into, I'm not stupid, I thought, well, okay, this is what I do, so it's what I've done for the last 20 or 30 years. I'm not after a big statement of any kind with my art. It's kind of comfort food art.
When I first start out painting, I think about the things I remember. I'm a hopeless romantic in that area. They come from past event stories, ideas that people had handed down from generation to generation about family members, different men of great background in the tribe. And so I draw people with those things in mind. I wanted to show a great deal of pride in the individual, a regalness about the warriors, about the people themselves, so other people are going to look at the work and say, he paints like the stories they used to tell us. It couldn't be anything else. It had to be a warrior and a horse, on the horse. And it had to be the most elite warrior you could possibly see, I guess. And that was the dog soldier, or the dog men. They personify the whole idea of forthright, honor, integrity, all those things. And being that mobile on a horse made him such a formidable warrior. When I was thinking about the project, one of the things that was asked of me at one time about horses and about Native American, and one said, well, the cowboy and the horse, I mean, they're the epitome of the West. And I said, and I had to say, wait a minute. When it comes to the horse in the West, it has to be the Native American. It isn't the cowboy, it's the Native American, because the Native American embraced the horse as one. He became one with the animal, seeing the same thing that the horse saw. A well-trained war horse almost knew a point to where his counterpart was in danger as well as himself. He would immediately remove himself from the area, or he would maneuver into battle the way the man would want him to, just by the nudge of his knee against a horse. And there's such a fluid movement with them. It was very exciting when they brought the horse to me, and seeing the whole thing in a three-dimensional state was very overwhelming. And I did my own hand sketch of what I would do prior to seeing the horse. And when I saw the horse, it fell just perfectly into the image that I had. The contours of the body, the shape, it all was just so easy to fall into it. I used the muscle tones of the horse. I used the shape of the stomach, the flanks, and just the body of the horse to enhance the image that I already had drawn out, and it all just fell into place. There was no problem whatsoever. Certain areas of the horse, I embellished an idea, almost a whimsical idea, and that is on the feathers. On most of the feathers, I rendered an image that showed something about people who touch my heart and my life very closely, and that's my family. I did an image of a horse, running horse, in the design that my son, who is also an artist, who is also one to do a horse for the Trail of Painted Ponies. One of the other unique ideas is I put buffaloes running in the feathers. Enjoyable to me. It was putting an image of a little mouse and on the front of the horse's head. Malachi is my youngest son, and we call him Mouse. And I wanted to let Malachi know that he's always on my mind. I love doing my work. I love doing it. If there was a way I can do this and make a living and give it away, I'd do it. And the Trail of Painted Ponies gave me that opportunity to do something I love with an idea that I love and to give it away. The whole concept is priceless.
And a woman from Dallas came to Santa Fe for a visit and to buy some art, and she saw this horse and she was mesmerized by it.
Well, I'm so excited because I'm at the Lindsay Theater, and they've just completed the auction on these fabulous painted ponies.
And she walked up, and at the bottom of the horse was a plaque and said, "This horse supports Habitat for Humanity."
$45,000, which we hope will build a house here in Santa Fe.
So First Preston asked that we would designate their proceeds to the Women's Build, a project that we have done for the last 3 years where it's a home built entirely by women. We will have 700 women building a house this year. We have a woman who is our site supervisor, who's a licensed contractor, and then we will have 70 or 80 teams that come over a period of 5 or 6 months.
Every time I come to this house, I feel cheery. I feel wonderful. I just feel real good vibes coming from this house. It's a new beginning for me. Hi, I'm Rose. This is my house. The thing I like the most is my nice big pantry. I really want to thank Yellow Man for painting this horse that made this house possible. From the bottom of my heart, I want to thank him. It's just like the best thing that ever happened to me. Thank you, Yellow Man.
I got involved with this project early on. I saw the very first call for artists that was published, and it just tickled my fancy. Rocks are characteristic in my body of work. I've painted rocks a lot. Cliff rocks, petroglyphs, river rocks, shiny rocks, polished rocks. And so when I started thinking about the horse, I thought about my body of work, and I thought that it would be logical to use rocks in the imagery, and then of course the rocks on the horse, rock, horse, rocking horse. Just came together eventually. We had 21 horses sponsored in Carlsbad, and during the initial stages of the development of the Educational Center for the Art Association, the building was empty and a dozen or so horses were put in there together. And so several of us painted at the same time, and it was a wonderful interaction to do that.
There was an ad at Southwest Art, and a fellow artist from Carlsbad, Helen Gwynn, asked me if I had submitted drawings, and I said, I saw that ad, but I didn't respond to it. She said, oh, I think you should, I think you should. So I began to do drawings at that point. I think of horses as sometimes being wild and fast and sometimes out of control. In our part of the state, in Cloudcroft, they had some major fires. I didn't name it after the fires, but the idea came from that. And then also the song, Wildfire, Michael Martin Murphy's song, it happens to be one of my favorites. This is the one I did first. Well, in working on my drawings, words that connect for me to horses, and the stud horse came out, and I said, oh, 5-card stud, that's a poker game. What a great idea. As an individual, there isn't any way that I could donate that kind of money to one charity, but through this horse, I'm going to be able to help a non-for-profit.
People from the community came in and out and visited with us and saw the progress of the horses. One small little girl, I'll never forget her, came with a little flint rock in her hand, and she said to me, this is my favorite rock, I wanted to bring it for you to see. And so she left it for a few days, and it's a flint rock, and it's right here in the composition. So I was delighted to have Ophelia's flint rock as part of the imagery for the rocking horse.
This is Desert Dream Horse, and the way she got her name was because she's kind of like when you have a dream about something and you have all kinds of different symbols, some very realistic, some very abstract, and they all just sort of blend into something else, and it goes on, but it has a theme to it. The eyes on this horse are pieces of turquoise. I was a little bit worried about how to get them in there. I didn't want them to fall out, so I took my Dremel tool. I use a lot of electric tools in my carving, and I carved into the horse, and the eyes are set in. So that's what keeps them in there. And in the front here is a brass scorpion. And when I first had it on there, it was flat, and everybody thought it was a dragonfly for some reason. So I curled the tail up. And it does have the right number of segments and the right shape for a scorpion. every creature on the horse has some kind of stone for the eyes. These small ponies have little glittery eyes. Kokopelli has an eye. You can see how everything turns into something else. Here is the sky with the skull. One of the horns goes into, becomes part of the design of the sun. One of the rays of the sun becomes the wing of the road runner. The hardest part of this horse was, since I need to have everything interconnect and do it in what to me is a logical sequence, and both sides are different, I thought there would be no problem connecting the top since I'm used to working in the round. But when I got to doing the horse, I had been unaware of what a huge expanse you have up there on the rump. So I had to, at the top of my head, come out with a whole bunch of different designs to try to get the two sides together. As far as letting it go, that's no problem. Poor people and Buddhists, of which I happen to be both, know that you don't get attached to things and you learn to live without things you love. So I'm very happy to see her go to someone who really wants her.
I had painted my first horse and I knew I was going to do a second horse, and I had to have it be a different horse from the first horse. And my work is very graphic and colorful, and the other horse did that and fulfilled that need for me. And this horse, I thought about him for about 2 or 3 days. When I'm often creating, I will try to dream about things and get my ideas from a dream. So I waited about 3 or 4 days, and he came almost in his entirety, just like you see him. I remember like it happened yesterday when Lori called from Horsepower and told me that El Diablo had been destroyed. And actually she was crying herself at the time, and it took about a half an hour for me to make a connection with the horse and relive the process that went from getting a naked pony to all the work that I did on the horse to bring it to life. I was in a funk for a good 2 or 3 days afterwards, and had actually cried for a couple of days and didn't even feel like being at the gallery because I was so upset about it. And if you've ever lost an animal, you really fall in love with him. And I didn't realize, creating both of my horses, how involved I was in that process. So it's great to have them back again.
I wanted something that had a name that already had meaning, so I could play off the name. And horse apples seemed to me to be a logical fit with the creation story, because in some contexts it's something that you say for something you don't quite believe, and the story itself had many versions and was distilled down to one, and given a different translator, the whole world would be different. In my own work, I use this red and white checkered picnic blanket as a meeting ground. A lot of the pieces have, in my work, I will have people sitting on this red and white checked background. It's a place to exchange ideas. Actually, having this body in between the two is a really good metaphor for the difficulty of communication, not just between men and women, but between people in general. I mean, it's always a hurdle to get your thought, and if the apple is indeed going to be knowledge or idea, to get your idea from your side of the horse to someone else's side of the horse is always going to be a task. And then, because once it's out of your hand and it's onto their side, it's no longer in your control or in your sight, so you're not exactly sure that what you sent was what they got. But when I was painting this, I kind of got the feeling that even after all this time, these little gatherings kind of make them nervous. Because it's a very slick, hard surface, it just took a little more time to get the kind of coverage that I wanted. So it was all a learning experience. You're laying on your back under this horse, painting sort of the Sistine horse belly, but it all worked out.
To be able to take something from nothing into something is the act of creating, and to me that's one of the most powerful things you can be involved with. It's like making science fiction fact, you know. It's like you know, you get to make things that weren't there, you know. It's like you have an idea and all of a sudden it's like real, and that to me is a real big kick out of doing it. I had been doing work for Star York, a lot of enlargements for her, and she asked me to do the enlargement for the horse that was used in the Painted Ponies project. And I asked her, I said, you know, I think I want to do one of these horses too, of my own. You know, I would always prefer a motorcycle over a horse, so I had to make my horse kind of, you know, fast and sporty, and so I started, you know, taking some machines and parts of machines and integrating them into the horse to make him not just a horse, but a turbo horse. I don't personally like horses. But I thought I had to do one anyway, just because everyone else did one, and I was going to show them that I could do a horse too. I tested things and manipulated them. This was a bicycle helmet that I've made into his helmet with an antenna so he could, you know, communicate with the proper authorities. Gun slots, retractable wings. He is a member of the United States Air Force. And the fin off a '59 Cadillac with lights that work. My benefactor, Hogatis, it helps at-risk children, which when I was making the horse, they brought up a bunch of kids to the studio, and they were great. They were really interested in it, and I let them use some of my power tools, and we made a day out of it, and appreciated their having fun, you know, and the Hogatis organization bringing up the students to see what, to see the project and see how they were going to benefit from it.
Everybody wanted to go see the turbo hay burner horse. Love that name, turbo hay burner. Yeah. It benefited us from many, many angles. First, the kids were able to participate. Secondly, we were able to be a part of a neat event for this state that brought good publicity for the state. It was a giving from the heart kind of event because many people were contributing, the artists, the industry, or whoever sponsored the horse, and then the nonprofits. A lot of these kids are very artistic, and they've never been given the opportunity to figure out how to express it, in what manner they could express it, and it's something that when they have that opportunity, you can just see the delight.
Maybe a drawing of it?
We do have a drawing of it. I do have a drawing.
Did you draw it?
Oh yeah, I did, but it, you know, as you start making anything, it starts changing a little bit. You know, I managed to really be more playful than I usually am with my pieces, and it had a little sense of humor, it had a little character to it, and it really, I think that's why it had such good response. People like humor, and that really did teach me a little something.
Well, I'm basically a designer, and I have been the majority of my life. But if you're a designer, you sort of look at things and try to find out what works and what doesn't work and how the process comes about. And when you understand all those, then you can design something for the medium that you're working in. During the war, my father took us out to California from Massachusetts, and by car to work in the defense plant, and we stopped in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and I was 10. And shucks, I saw my first cowboy. Woof! Wow. And that stuck in my head. I don't know how I became a designer, but I always wanted to have be a cowboy. And when I started doing cowboy stuff, which came so natural, I started dressing like a cowboy. And I find that very comfortable. It's kind of neat to represent, something that's grand about the country. This here is a gun lamp. You'll never guess why we call it that, I'll bet. Well, say you're sitting there, and you're kind of bored one evening. TV comes on and that's... When I got the opportunity to do one of the painted ponies, I was delighted because I thought it would be fun to do something that was provocative and something that you'd like to show your kids and something that your kids would like to show you. The way I usually work is just to study the problem briefly, and the problem was to do something that was fun about horses, and then I just sort of sit back and wait for the idea to pop in, which it usually does pretty quickly, and so that the idea comes not from you, it comes through you, which is not a secret, but it's a misconception a lot of people have. They think they came up with the idea when the idea is out there floating around and it's ready to come home. One of the most challenging parts of doing the horsefly was doing the legs. I woke up in the middle of the night and realized that I probably couldn't get the thing out the door. So I got 5 friends, and the 6 of us tried to angle it around the door, and it didn't work, and I had to take off 3 of the legs. Joke's on me. I mean, it's a very funny horse. The eyes were a challenge too. Actually, I think I went all over town finding the right colanders for the eyes. So we proceeded with the horse and put it on top of jackalope, which was another great problem, and punched holes in the roof, and then there was the concern with the wind would blow it off, and but it survived nicely, and a lot of kids did tell me that it was their favorite horse, so hey, I was pleased.
Having this image come to me about this fleshy colored, eyeball covered horse was something that probably wouldn't have come to mind looking at a blank canvas. Thinking about this horse and thinking about an animal and people looking at an animal that's not alive, that's a sculpture, but people are alive and we're animals, and what is this act of looking, a human being looking at another animal that's just static. So the idea of these eyes looking back at you and throwing that action of perceiving back, that's what art, to me, is important to do, is to throw back at us something that we're doing and make us conscious again of that act. One thing that really surprised me was when I first did the horse, I first just covered it with a flesh color. And when I came back into the studio the next day, there was this flesh-colored horse, and it really shocked me. It looked naked, and I thought, but wait, horses are naked, but just changing the color did that. And so all along, as I kept painting it, it gave me these little surprises, which I look for when I paint. And I didn't think I would, having that whole picture in my head and just following through. In the course of the couple of weeks of actually painting all these eyeballs, as people walked in, hey, wait, sit for me for a second. So my son's in there and my husband and various friends and whoever I could get to stare at their eyes for a few moments, they're in there. So it's nice. I kind of have a nice attachment to it when I see it.
For my subject matter in my paintings, what I do is I do a lot of research. I'm from the Crow tribe. They're the Plains Indian, and I like to be, my research is around the Plains people. The young men were just adorned handsomely. They're young warriors because they feel that when they go out, even just to protect their territory or going on horse race to get their horse back or removing somebody that's not wanted in their hunting area, there's always, not always, but sometimes there's conflicts, there's skirmishes. And when they go out, their women and their wives or sisters want their, brother or father to be dressed right, properly when they leave this world. We've always had horses in our family. We'd play tag on horseback through the chokecherry bushes. And that was rough, but it was a lot of fun. And I think when you go back, to our area, just about every family has a horse. If you can see a sweat lodge or a horse, it's a Crow family's home. The Crow name for horse is Ijida. And when it came to us, it was like Ijida means something you mount, you ride on, or like standing on, like that interpretation, but it's something you sit on, meaning and to view far away. I created a camp here. Then I had a band of horses with, and band of horses meaning tame and that they're secure, and they're resting horses also, so they still have some of the markings you see on here, like with the band around their eyes here. The mother is here. She has the Crow elk tooth dress. And for each, these are elk teeth, and for each, there's 2 teeth per animal. And this indicating sometimes there's 300-400 shells or elk teeth on a woman's dress, indicating the fact that the man is a very good provider, for his family. And on the top here, we have a helper. I should say we have helpers. They're like little dwarf people. We call them the little people. And I think they're kind of reminiscent of the legends of the leprechaun in the Irish, with the Irish people. But what I'm indicating here is they're facing, I think I've got about 17 different images of heads of little people here, watching over the camp here and watching over the warrior and how they're doing. It's on the opposite side here. But they played a major role as helpers, and sometimes they're very mischievous too. What I have here is a very significant individual. The fact that he is wearing a full bonnet of feathers, of eagle feathers, golden eagle feathers. And these riders are heading back from a successful campaign, and in this case, they're coming back into camp as this horse heads turns, it circles. The whole thought is they've come back, and it was successful, indicating this by wearing their finery, like with the full, like their body paints and the full eagle headdresses. In this middle group area here, you can find some older people in the background. They're pipe carriers or medicine people that were with the younger group here. Like in the major battle, they would kind of hold back and let the younger people do what needs to be done. And back over here, I've placed a portrait, with this triangular headband with some. These are hawk feathers here. And he's perhaps a really noted medicine person. And so they seek his counsel. My love for the art, my love for what I do, I think it really speaks for itself. Whatever you do, you just do the best you can to add quality. That's kind of like my father's philosophy. If you do it right the first time with quality and you put your heart into it, he said, they won't come back. It won't come back to you. Meaning that, you have to come back and fix it. Dala shijitsa. That means don't work with your arms stretched out, so that way you don't really know what's going on. He said, be right there immediately and looking at it. Then you'll see all the details, what you're trying to complete.
being in the art world, I think, makes a lot of difference if you love what you do.
I decided to honor Georgia O'Keeffe because it seemed perfectly appropriate given that the beneficiary is women in the arts. And of course, since Georgia O'Keeffe is probably certainly the best known woman artist in New Mexico, and also her home base was Abiquiu, New Mexico, which is where I live and have my ranch. So everything seemed to dovetail and seemed to be right. What I've tried to do with the horse is include a lot of the imagery that I associate and George O'Keeffe associated with the Abiquiu area. You can be walking across the desert and see an amazing amount of flowers that seem to survive in what you'd think would be such an inhospitable environment. These red mountains in the front are a good example of the red rock formations that you see in certain areas of Abiquiu. And of course the mountains with the juniper and pinyon. And this mountain range here is Pedernal, which is one of the most outstanding vistas in Abiquiu, and O'Keeffe painted many, many times. The tree on the front of the horse was one of my favorite paintings of her because it reminded me, as a child, lying under the stars and looking up. This tree she painted from the ranch of D.H. Lawrence. And of course, the final image I wanted to point to is the portrait of Georgia herself. And I hope that if she is looking down on this project, she's getting a kick out of it.
So the 22.5.
I was asked to do a horse to raise money for the Santa Fe Animal Shelter, and I'm a passionate animal activist, and the Santa Fe Shelter is an extraordinary organization with a very realistic dream that would be helped a lot by a large price tag on something like this. I'm not an artist, as most of the people who did this Trail of Painted Ponies are, but doing this sort of thing has been something that's thrilled me all my life. And so I concocted a fantasy horse that is perhaps a horse of another horse culture, not the Plains Indians, not our cowboys, which is a fabulous culture too, but the one that captivates me maybe is symbolized a bit by a horse I called Karuna, which is the Sanskrit word for compassion. Having looked at the textiles and the graphics of that part of the world and owning and wearing the costumes for literally decades, I concocted a horse with a blanket, and his spots are mirrors only because in Gujarat all the buildings and all the clothing have mirrors sewn into them, and I just thought it would be fabulous looking. I love this sort of Buddhist yellow, and that's what I consider it to be. Perhaps it's not quite orange enough, but it's close enough. It's the yellow of a civilization based on compassion as behavior. What happened with me is that I got the horse, I painted him yellow. You paint 2 undercoats and you sand them, and that was fun, and he was still white. And then I went not knowing, I'm really completely ignorant about this, and I went to the paint store and I worked the color till it was right, and I had no idea how much I wanted, but I knew I couldn't run out of it because I'm no mathematician, and I knew that if I had the formula wrong and I screwed it up, I'd be painting for the rest of my life. So I had enough yellow paint to give to a friend to paint her bathroom when this was over. I found old buttons, which are often used in the embroideries in that part of the world. It was fun. Actually, I went down into my little cave, put on the music that I love and changed from day to day and just tranced out. And I had more fun doing this horse than anything I've done in a long time. I put this heart as a sort of bridal decoration because there's hair, a great big tuft of mane coming down over it. But this is a shape that you see a great deal in Turkoman jewelry, and it's always a kind of a low-grade silver and brass, and then carnelian, and they come enormous and tiny, and they're all over the place. And it just seemed like a wonderful thing to put on her bridle. This looks like just a design from the distance, but it says, "May all creatures, great and small, be forever free from suffering." And it goes around and around infinitely.
This is such an exquisitely beautiful, beautiful horse. And the message that Ali has put on the horse, that all animals not suffer, that we relieve the suffering of all creatures, great and small. I think this horse is going to go into the hands of someone very special who shares this feeling, not only about horses, but about all animals. And so for us, I think it's a quiet waiting for the right person that will welcome this horse into their home and certainly help us realize the dream of a much-needed new animal shelter. We are in the plans to create a new facility that is not just a new animal shelter to take care of the animals, but is actually a campus that combines the needs and the resources of animals and people of this community to work together on behalf of animals. The new vision that Ali talked about was really a whole new idea to bring people and animals together in a community and to help really reduce the numbers of unwanted and discarded animals that really plague this nation and certainly plague Santa Fe.
When I started to paint my horse and thought of it as decoration, and I've had time and months to think about what maybe secret voices were talking to me and what maybe I wanted to say with my horse, which is that if man and horse, or man and dog, or man and whatever, could respectfully honor the other creatures, be they other colored two-legged creatures, other cultured two-legged creatures, other four-legged creatures, if we could respect each other and honor each other's needs to have space to move in, and clean air to breathe, and clean water to drink, and enough plain food to eat, we could all live happily ever after. Art is like that. It can crack open our hearts, regenerate our communities, and change our world. Since art is the true measure of time, perhaps it's time for us to realize that the fate of our country and the future of the entire world depends upon the vision of the artist. And we are all artists.